this video, we're going to talk about pensions. I'll admit to being a bit scared about this one because the topic is so detailed and it feels daunting to me, but it's important to employees and has big dollars attached. So we should really have a grasp on the basics. So the question is, what should generalists and leaders know about pensions? This is the fundamental question we're going to ask today and get answers to, and that's coming up right now. Hi there, I'm Andrea Adams and the host of HR Shop Talk. This is a show where you get some expert insight into all things HR through conversations with smart and experienced professionals who've done the work. I encourage you to subscribe to the show or to the podcast to keep learning from my guests. Today, my guest is Brent Perdue. Brent has been in total rewards for most of his career. First and foremost, dealing with all things pension related. He started out working in the consulting realm before moving in-house, where he provides subject matter expertise to leaders, finance, and HR generalists. Hi, Brent. How are you?
Good, Andrea. How you doing?
I'm good. And looking forward to this. That's right. That's how I'm feeling about this. Get ready. All right. So let's start with a relatively easy question. So you've been the in-house resource on pensions for a few big companies. So what does that typically mean? And so what are you doing with respect to pensions?
Yeah, for the most part, it has to do with being able to coordinate pension plan, people that are participating in that plan, as well as those who are overseeing the plan. A big part of it is in some ways demystifying pensions. A lot of people look at pensions from the outside looking in and they say, gee, I don't know if I want to go down that rabbit hole. But being the in-house person, you become like an expert in the plan, and you're able to kind of guide people along, speaking human to them instead of beguiling them with too much pension jargon. And believe me, there's plenty of pension jargon in that space.
Yes. You talked about, I think you said pension participants?
Yes.
Pension participants, are those people that have the pension, like the employees?
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes, when you think about pensions, like, oh, the employee gets the pension plan, but it's broader than that. A lot of defined benefit plans will have, somebody who goes through an entire career, they end their career, they actually retire and they start to collect from the pension. Well, they're not an employee anymore. Okay. You would call them a retiree, but even a lot of those DB plans will have provisions for that person's spouse. So that retiree lives for, you hope, many, many decades and passes away. And often the pension continues to the spouse.
So it can be employees, retirees, and the spouses of retirees.
Yep. And beneficiaries, for example, if the employee, God forbid, were to pass away while working and they're only in their 40s, beneficiary could be, a child, it could be a friend or a brother or sister or something. That becomes a participant in their own rights. If there is a spouse, oftentimes the DB plan might even start right away, because knowing that the spouse may not have a primary source of income anymore, the pension plan becomes that.
Okay, that was useful. All right, so you have talked about this a little bit. So who are the typical players in a pension plan and in the administration of a plan, and what are their roles?
Lots of the work actually gets done in HR. HR often takes the lead in compiling the agenda for the committees that oversee these pension plans. And you often go there as a subject matter expert. A couple places I worked, I was the pension secretary. That's the person who is responsible for making sure the meetings happen, that the agendas are set, that all the people who are supposed to show up do, and the people who are supposed to leave when they're supposed to, as well as making sure that the committee has everything it needs as far as a fiduciary aspect. There's a governance landscape that has to be navigated. And I'm sure everybody who's listening has a horror story that they've heard on the news about, somebody goes to retire and suddenly the pension fund isn't there. As more and more events like that unfold, the stricter the regulations actually get on pension plans. So it's far less likely to happen these days than it was like back in the 70s. That's very rare now, thanks to all that regulation.
You talked about, there's two things that I just wanted to clarify there, I guess. You talk about the committee, and that wasn't something I was familiar with. do all organizations with pensions have a committee?
For the most part, they will have some sort of representation. The bigger companies will have an HRCC, Human Resources and Comp Committee. Typically, the HRCC is where pension reports up into the board. The board being the ultimate sponsor of the fund and of the plan, and they have to make sure that all the regulatory compliance happens. Well, they're too busy to actually do that work. They're responsible that it happens, so they often delegate down to a management committee. That is, it's usually made up of employees from legal and finance and strategy and risk and HR. And that committee is often called like the pension management committee or something. Maybe it has pension and benefits management. But that's where practical and tactical things happen to make sure that the plan is compliant. And then when they have to have decisions that are made, they usually compile that information for the HRCC and it goes up to the board and typically gets ratified that way. But yeah, there could be several layers of oversight depending on the size of the company. If you don't have any, then you really are kind of exposing yourself to the worst part about pension administration, and that is if there is no good decision-making process. Maybe a bad decision gets made in these committees, but it's not the decision that gets scrutinized heavily when something goes to arbitration. It's the process. So the committees, almost in a way, they protect the company, they protect the plan, and they protect the employees.
Right. And you talked about governance. Is governance part of the regulations? Like, is it mandated by regulations as well?
Yep, absolutely. In many ways, the province is setting there to make sure that the fund has the money it's supposed to have. These are usually DB plans.
Right.
And there's really two metrics that are involved with outside parties looking in to see if a pension plan is healthy. And one of them would be solvency. And that's the idea that if the plan were to stop existing right now, if it were to wind up right now, is there enough money to pay everybody everything they've accrued so far? That rarely happens. If it does happen, then of course you got to make sure you have all the money that's there. But imagine you're filing those every year going, well, we didn't wind it up. We didn't wind it up. We didn't wind it up. And yet we're still trying to keep this thing fully funded. Well, that's where there's another valuation called going concern. And the going concern says, what if the plan lives forever? What if it never winds up? Then you can go, well, listen, we're going to invest some money. We think we'll get a rate of return of X. That way, we don't need to have all the money in there right now, because as time goes by, we're going to be able to bring money in from contributions as well as from investments. And we think that should this plan keep going, it's healthy. But you can imagine those two valuations may not actually agree with each other on how much money needs to be there at any given point. So
for sure,
the actuaries and the provinces and any federally regulated, some plans are regulated specifically from the federal level. They actually are doing all that work to make sure that there's enough money.
So what should an HR business partner or generalist know about pensions?
I would say first and foremost, they should know what kind of pension plan their company sponsors. There's really just two kinds of pension plans. One is defined benefit, and the other is defined contribution. The idea of a defined benefit plan is that the end is known. That is, if I say you're going to get $50 a year for every year you're in the plan, and you're there for 10 years, you're going to get $500. You're going to, $50 a month for every year you're there, you get $500 a month. That's great. That's defined. Let's say the markets tank. A person in a DB plan is just like, I don't care. My benefit is defined. It's the risk is on the company's side. The company may be scrambling to try to rebuild that asset base, but the benefit is set.
Right.
Contrarily, defined contribution is the other end. That is, the money going in is defined. Oh, it's 8% of your base pay, or you put in 4, the company will put in 6. You have to now manage it as yourself. And it's like an RSP. If the markets, how the markets react is how it's going to impact your savings. Companies love them because you can say, hey, listen, we got a pension plan. We're going to set some money aside for you. We'll give you a platform like Sun Life or other places like that, and you can go and invest, and we'll give you, good oversight. Still, the committees look at that, make sure the funds are good, but it's up to you to invest it, to stay on top of your investments, to alter your investment strategy based on your lifestyle and all the things that you've got to plan. You got to work with your financial advisor. And at the end, when you leave the company, the Sun Lifes or those big platforms will send you a package and say, hey, here's your money. Do you want to move it over to your bank? Where do you want to move it? And the company is done with you. There are no retirees. There's no spouses.
Right. There's no ongoing liability.
No ongoing liability. And if a person passes away in their 40s, whatever, then you say, well, who are the beneficiaries? And you write them a check and you get the money out and they're done. They're gone.
Mm-hmm. So leaders, HR leaders, do they have a higher standard? What should they know about pensions?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd say first and foremost, they should know what pension plan their people are in. Unionized environments, you actually might have a different pension plan than management. So it's a good idea just to have an understanding of your own pension, but also what pension plan your people are in, so you can talk to them. And I would say also that employees should have a good appreciation for what the pension plan brings to them as far as their employee value proposition. If a leader sits down and somebody says, I really want to raise, I need to get all those things, and doesn't have an appreciation that the person's compensation is not their base pay plus their bonuses, but it's benefits, it's wellness programs, it's pension plans being, a deferred compensation piece. A leader should be able to speak, confidently to their employee.
If you found this interesting, subscribe to see all the episodes and comment. What questions do you have about pensions? Let us know in the comment section below. You talked a little bit earlier about the value proposition. So how do pensions fit into the employee value proposition? And is it something they're aware of?
That's a great question. I think the employee value proposition itself might be something they're not quite aware of. And that's not their fault. I think a lot of companies struggle actually compiling one or articulating one.
Yes.
When I think of total rewards, I really think of this pantheon. It's 4 pillars that hold up the old ancient Athens kind of structure. Yeah. And it goes from wellness, benefits, compensation, and pension. And it's kind of funny. Employees, when they're in a pension plan and they have to contribute to it, they're like, curse that pension plan. Yes. It's cutting into my net pay and oh my gosh. And at the end of their career, like, oh, I love that pension plan. I'm so glad I put that much into it.
Yeah. It sounds like my husband actually. Doesn't want to contribute to his pension plan.
Oh,
good thing I do.
Yeah, but at the end of their career, they usually are delighted and it's amazing. The really good companies won't just let you retire and say, here's your paper. 5 years before, if you are, if your plan lets you retire at 55, maybe at 50, they'll start giving you pre-retirement sessions. They'll have financial, education information sessions throughout your career. Go to those. I used to bring in this fellow who did a fantastic job, a 2-day. One was a Friday, so it was like on company time, and half a Saturday, so on your time. So the company and the employer make the investment. He had 8 modules that he talked about in that day and a half. One of them was money. Only one.
Wow.
The other 7 were your lifestyle, the things that you expect to do, how you're gonna handle your assets. Are you really gonna bequeath the cottage to the children? Watch out for the tax man, all that stuff. It was absolutely amazing, but it was really about, are you ready to retire?
So final question here. If someone in the audience out there who's watching this or listening to this just got some responsibility in the pensions area, what do you suggest they learn first and where could they go to get that info?
Well, if they're just coming into pensions, I'd say turn around and run.
Okay, don't say that.
I'm only kidding. First and foremost, there'll be documents that'll be in-house, and that's your plan text. Once you get a little bit more familiar with how pension plans are laid out, you can find what you're looking for pretty easily. There's also, I would say if I was just starting a career, the first thing I'd want to do is reach out to my actuary. I want to reach out to the consulting houses and find my counterpart, maybe even find the chief actuary who's sort of on our account and just, have a conversation with them about what the plan is like. Also service providers. If you have a DC plan and there's a suite of funds out there, you can guarantee you have someone on the other side of that equation. Another big thing I would say is when you start in pensions, you'll be surprised at your interaction with senior leaders in the company.
All right. Well, that was a lot of information. But thank you. That did make elements of a tough topic digestible. So I'll be doing more total rewards episodes, and we'll add a link when those are done. Thanks for watching and see you next time.